I held my breath behind the towering Christmas tree, phone gripped tight, ready to record my husband's infidelity. But when the lights clicked on, the woman beside him was not a stranger. It was my best friend of 20 years, holding a fake dossier designed to frame me for stealing $10 million. I realized then that physical betrayal was trivial compared to this calculated plot to erase my existence and steal the empire I had built from scratch. My name is Valerie Cross, and at 42 years old, I had spent the last 2 decades extinguishing fires for Fortune 500 CEOs as the founder of Summit Global Strategies. Yet here I was, crouching in the shadows of my own foyer, unable to manage the crisis unfolding under my own roof. I had told my husband, Julian, that I was flying to London for an emergency consultation. It was a lie, a necessary one. The unexplained credit card charges and the icy distance in his eyes had screamed infidelity for months. I needed proof. So I parked my rental car 3 blocks away and slipped into the house like a thief, positioning myself behind the 12-foot Douglas fir that dominated the entryway to catch him in the act. The front door clicked open, snow flurried in, followed by the heavy tread of expensive leather boots. I held my phone steady, the camera lens peeking through the pine needles. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. God, it's freezing out there. Julian's voice echoed in the cavernous hall. I waited for the giggle of a 20-something mistress to follow. Instead, a familiar, smoky voice answered him. "Quit whining. Julian, we have work to do before she gets back." My blood ran cold. That was not a stranger. That was Monica Reed, my CFO, my maid of honor. The woman I had shared a dorm room with at Stanford and trusted with my life. They walked into the living room, bathing the space in warm light. Through the branches, I saw them. They were not embracing. They were spreading documents across the coffee table. "Is the transfer ready?" Julian asked, pouring himself a scotch. "Project Farewell is in the final stage," Monica replied, her tone professional, clinical. "I need you to sign these wire authorizations. Keep your hand loose. Remember how she loops her V." I watched in horror as Monica guided his hand over the paper. She was teaching him to forge my signature. "It's too easy." Julian laughed, a cruel sound I had never heard before. Valerie is such a naive workaholic. She checks the client accounts 3 times a day, but never looks at the internal slush fund if you're the one presenting it. "By the time the auditors see this, the $10 million will be offshore," Monica said, tapping the paper, and the paper trail leads straight to her personal gambling debt, which we created last week. 10 million, Julian mused. Enough to make sure she signs the divorce papers without a fight. If she wants to stay out of federal prison, she'll give up everything, including custody of Maya. I nearly retched. Maya was 19, technically an adult, but she was still my little girl. They wanted to take her too. I thought I had reached the bottom of the abyss, but the floor fell out from under me. The sound of heels clicking on the marble floor came from the direction of the kitchen. "Have you 2 finished the play yet? The champagne is getting warm." My mother, Evelyn, stepped into the light. She was wearing the cashmere shawl I had bought her for her birthday, carrying a silver tray with 3 crystal flutes. Almost done. "Evelyn." Julian smiled at her. "Good," my mother sneered. "I am so tired of walking on eggshells around her. Valerie is so controlling and stingy. She questions every dime I spend. Don't worry, Mom," Julian said, taking a glass. "Once we kick her to the curb, that villa in Florida is yours. Cash." My vision blurred. My husband. My best friend. My mother. The trinity of my life. Clinking glasses over my destruction. A wave of nausea hit me so hard my grip failed. The phone slipped from my sweat-slicked fingers and crashed onto the hardwood floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. All 3 heads snapped toward the Christmas tree. I stepped out from behind the pine needles, my legs trembling so violently I thought they might buckle beneath me. I walked into the center of the living room, my eyes burning, expecting to see shame or panic on their faces. I expected them to scramble, to offer stuttered excuses, but I was wrong. The air in the room was thick with a terrifying, unnatural calm. Monica did not flinch. She simply lifted her crystal flute to her lips, took a slow, deliberate sip of the vintage champagne I had been saving for our 20th anniversary, and smiled. "You are home early." "Val," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "we did not expect you until midnight." I looked at the woman who had held my hand through my father's funeral. Then I turned to the man I had built a life with. Julian was leaning back on the sofa, unbothered, watching me with the detached amusement of a spectator at a zoo. "Mom," I choked out, turning to the woman standing by the fireplace. "Please, tell me you are not part of this. My mother, Evelyn," looked me up and down with a cold, appraising stare. She did not step forward to comfort me. Instead, she took a step closer to Julian. I had to make a choice. "Valerie," she said, her voice devoid of warmth, "I am 65 years old. I cannot live on the allowance you give me. Julian understands that. He knows how to treat family. You just offer lectures on budgeting. He is stealing from me," I screamed, my voice cracking. "He is stealing everything he is winning." Evelyn replied with a shrug, "And I always bet on the winner." "You do not own this house anymore." "Valerie," Julian cut in, his voice dropping an octave, "I utilized that power of attorney you signed last year for the vacation property. It turns out the language was broad enough to transfer the deed to this estate and the control of the private security contract. As of last Tuesday, this is my house." Monica reached into her briefcase and tossed a thick, leather-bound folder onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. "And this," Monica said, gesturing with her glass, "is your life story, or the version the FBI will read. Anyway, it is all there. Val, the wire transfers to offshore casinos, the receipts for luxury goods you never bought but somehow paid for. We did a thorough job. It looks like you have been embezzling from the company for 3 years to feed a crippling gambling addiction." I stared at the folder, the room spinning. "If you sign the divorce papers and the stock transfer agreement tonight," Julian said, leaning forward, "we bury this. You walk away with nothing, but you stay free. If you refuse, well, Special Agent Miller gets this file at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning." "Maya," I whispered, panic seizing my chest. "I need to call Maya." I fumbled for my phone on the floor, my fingers numb. I dialed my daughter's number. It rang, and rang, and rang. Julian chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "She is not going to answer." "Val, she is in Aspen. She just checked into the presidential suite with 3 of her friends." "Aspen. She has finals next week. She needed a break," Julian said, spreading his hands. "And she needed that black card you refused to give her. I gave it to her yesterday. I told her you were trying to control her life, trying to keep her on a leash. I told her I was the one who wanted her to be free." The realization hit me harder than the cold. They had not just stolen my money, they had purchased my daughter's loyalty. They knew I had raised Maya with strict discipline, teaching her the value of hard work, while Julian had played the fun, permissive parent. They had weaponized my parenting against me. "Get out," Julian said, his tone suddenly bored. "You are trespassing. You cannot do this," I stammered. Julian snapped his fingers. The library doors opened, and 2 men I did not recognize marched in. They were not our usual security team. These men were massive, wearing tactical gear, their faces impassive. "Escort Mrs. Thorne off the premises," Julian commanded. "If she resists, drag her." Before I could scream, rough hands grabbed my arms. I was hauled backward, my heels dragging on the marble. I fought, I kicked, but I was powerless against them. They dragged me through the foyer, past the tree I had decorated, and shoved me out the front door. I stumbled down the stone steps and fell hard onto the driveway. The shock of the freezing pavement stole the breath from my lungs. The heavy oak door slammed shut behind me, the lock clicking with a finality that echoed in the night. I lay there for a moment, the snow soaking through my thin blouse, shivering violently. I pushed myself up and looked back at the house. Through the large bay window, the scene was picture perfect. The fire was roaring, the Christmas lights were twinkling. Julian, Monica, and my mother were raising their glasses in a toast, laughing. They were celebrating my death, and I was still alive to watch it. The wind off Lake Michigan was not just cold, it was a physical assault. Chicago in December is merciless to the unprepared, and I was walking down Michigan Avenue in a silk blouse and a pencil skirt, my teeth chattering so hard I bit my tongue. I had no coat, no purse. My phone was clinging to 4% battery. I tried to hail a cab, but the app on my phone flashed a red error message, card declined. Account frozen! Reported stolen! Julian had moved fast. He had reported my cards lost or stolen the moment I was shoved out the door. I was a ghost in my own city. I ducked into the vestibule of a closed bank to escape the wind and scrolled through my contacts. I called Peter, my mentor, blocked. I called Sarah, a client I had saved from a scandal just last month. A text message popped up instantly. Valerie, please do not contact me. Given the allegations in Monica's email regarding your mental instability and embezzlement, our legal team has advised us to sever ties. Monica had not just burned the bridge, she had nuked it. She had sent a mass email to everyone. I was toxic, radioactive. I walked until my feet bled in my heels. I found a seedy motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind with neon signs that buzzed like dying insects. The clerk, a man with grease stains on his shirt, looked at me with suspicion. Cash up front, he grunted. $40 a night. I had nothing. No cash, no cards. Then I looked at my left hand, my wedding ring, a 3-carat diamond that Julian had bought with my bonus check 5 years ago. I twisted it off. It felt heavy, like a shackle. Take this, I said, my voice hoarse. I need a room, and I need $200 in cash, and I need to borrow a laptop for an hour. He bit the ring, eyeing me greedily. Room 6. Laptop's behind the desk. Don't spill anything on it. The room smelled of stale smoke and despair. I sat on the lumpy mattress, clutching the dirty bills, and finally, I broke. I curled into a ball and sobbed. I cried for the husband I thought loved me. I cried for the friend I had treated like a sister, but mostly, I wept for the image of my mother and daughter choosing money over me. Why I whispered into the darkness, I gave you everything. But as the tears dried on my cheeks, something shifted. The self-pity began to harden into something colder, sharper. I was Valerie Cross. I did not survive the dot-com crash and the 2008 recession by crying in motel rooms. I was the crisis queen. Rule number 1, I muttered to the empty room, wiping my face with the back of my hand. Do not panic. Analyze the data. I sat up. I looked at the cracked mirror on the wall. I looked like a wreck, but my eyes were clear. Julian and Monica were celebrating. They were arrogant. They thought they had won because they held the keys to the castle. But they forgot who built the castle. They were inheritors, parasites living off a host. I was the architect. I grabbed the clerk's battered laptop and booted it up. The screen flickered. I navigated to a nondescript IP address. Bypassing the shiny, user-friendly login page of Summit Global Strategies, Monica knew the financial software. She knew the bank accounts, but she did not know about the dead man's switch. Years ago, after a security scare, I had installed a backdoor into the company's server. A hidden root directory accessible only by a manual code sequence I had memorized. I typed it in now, my fingers flying over the sticky keys. Access granted. I was in I bypassed the fake ledgers they had created to frame me and went straight to the raw data logs. What I saw made my breath hitch. "You greedy idiots," I whispered. It wasn't just $10 million. The rabbit hole went deeper, much deeper. Julian hadn't just been spending money. He had been losing it. Colossal sums poured into cryptocurrency scams. And to cover the losses, they weren't just embezzling, they were washing money for a shell company linked to Blackwater Holdings, a notorious front for illegal real estate flipping and organized crime. They weren't just thieves, they were criminals in bed with sharks. I downloaded everything, every transaction, every chat log, every incriminating email they thought they had deleted. I saved it all to a cloud server they couldn't touch. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The snow was still falling, covering the grime of the city in a blanket of white. I touched the cold glass. The Valerie who walked into that house tonight was a victim. She was gone. The woman standing here now was a hunter. "Enjoy the champagne." "Julian," I said softly to the reflection in the glass. "Drink up, because I am going to make you pay for every single tear I shed tonight. And the bill is going to be astronomical." The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in the dingy motel room, casting long, shivering shadows against the peeling wallpaper. As the data streams cascaded down the monitor, my mind drifted back 20 years, peeling away the layers of deception I had allowed to calcify around my life. I remembered Julian as he was when I met him. He was not the titan of industry the magazines profiled today. He was a struggling actor waiting tables at a bistro, possessing a jawline cut from granite and a head full of empty air. I was the one who bought him his first tailored suit. I was the one who wrote every single one of his speeches, staying up until 3 a.m. while he slept soundly, dreaming of unearned applause. I crafted the myth of Julian Thorne, the visionary, while I worked 18 hours a day in the shadows to make sure his checks did not bounce. And Monica. My stomach twisted at the thought of her. I met her when she was heating ramen noodles in a coffee pot because she could not afford a stove. I paid her tuition for her final 2 years of college. When she failed the CPA exam twice, I hired her anyway. I promoted her to CFO not because she was brilliant, but because I thought she was loyal. I valued a sisterhood that apparently only existed in my own head. Then there was my mother. Even as I sat here, destitute and freezing, I could hear Evelyn's voice in my ear. "Why can't you be more like the Miller girl she used to say, sipping the wine I paid for? She married a senator. She knows how to relax. You are always so intense." Valerie, it is unladylike. She never saw the work. She only saw the checkbook, and now she had sold me out for a villa in Florida. I shook the memories away. Nostalgia was a luxury for the living. I was currently fighting for survival. I opened a secure, encrypted messaging channel. There was only one person left in this city who owed me anything. User online Marcus 0. 5 years ago. Marcus was a 19-year-old kid facing 10 years in federal prison for hacking a bank. I saw his potential. I pulled strings, got the charges dropped to a misdemeanor, and got him a job. He was a white hat hacker now, legit and brilliant. I typed a single line, "I need to cash in the favor." "Now." The reply came 3 seconds later. An incoming voice call request. I plugged in the headset. Val Marcus's voice was distorted by anxiety. "I saw the news. They say you ran off with millions. What is going on? It is a frame job." "Marcus," I said, my voice steady steel. "I need you to trace the money, not the surface accounts. I need you to find where the cash from Project Farewell is actually going. Monica thinks she scrubbed the metadata, but she is sloppy." "Give me 10 minutes, he said. I waited, watching the snow pile up on the windowsill. When Marcus came back on the line, his voice was different. It was heavy. "Valerie, you are not going to like this. Tell me." I commanded. "I found the shell company. It is called Aurora Holdings. It is holding $3 million in bad debt and is legally listed as the primary liable entity for the money laundering operation with the cartel. Okay, I said, calculating. So Julian is hiding behind a shell. That is standard. No. Val. Listen to me. Marcus hesitated, his breath hitching. Julian isn't the registered owner of Aurora Holdings. Neither is Monica. Then who is? It's Maya, Marcus whispered. They used Maya's social security number. They forged her signature on the incorporation papers 6 months ago. If the feds bust this ring, your daughter goes down for all of it. She is the fall guy. A sound escaped my throat. A guttural animal noise that I did not recognize. Rage, hot and blinding, flooded my veins. They could steal my money. They could steal my company. But to use my 19-year-old daughter as a human shield to set her up to rot in prison for their crimes. He is dead, I hissed into the microphone, my hand gripping the table so hard my knuckles turned white. He is a dead man walking. We can send this to the FBI now, Marcus suggested hurriedly. Clear your name. No, I said, forcing my heart rate to slow down. If we send it now, they will claim Maya was the mastermind and they were duped parents. They have the lawyers to spin this. I need a confession. I need them to hang themselves. I looked at the company calendar on the hacked server. Next Saturday. The grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton. The New Year's gala and CEO announcement. Marcus, I said, a cold smile touching my lips for the first time that night. Are you free next Saturday? For you always. What's the play? They want a show, I said, staring at the digital invitation on the screen where Julian and Monica beamed like royalty. So, we are going to give them one. We are going to let them walk onto that stage. Think they have the world at their feet. And then we are going to burn the ground out from under them. I knew exactly where Maya would be at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. The Gilded Bean was the only coffee shop in the city that served her preferred oat milk latte with the exact ratio of foam she demanded. However, getting close to her was a tactical nightmare. Julian had surrounded her with a security detail that rivaled a presidential visit, feeding her lies that I was unstable and dangerous. I pulled the brim of the black baseball cap lower over my eyes and adjusted the scratchy apron I had swiped from the employee locker room 10 minutes earlier. I was no longer Valerie Cross. CEO, I was just another invisible server clearing tables. I spotted her in the corner booth, laughing with 2 friends. She looked radiant, expensive, and terrifyingly young. A large man in a dark suit stood 6 feet away, his eyes scanning the room. I waited until he turned his head toward the entrance. Then I moved. Refill on water, I asked, keeping my head down as I approached the table. Maya did not even look up. No, just take the empty plates. I reached out, allowing my hand to brush hers. She recoiled, looking up in annoyance. The moment her eyes locked with mine, the color drained from her face. She opened her mouth to scream, but I gripped her wrist, hard. Do not make a scene. Maya, I whispered urgently. I just need 2 minutes. She yanked her hand back, her eyes flashing with a mixture of fear and fury. Get away from me, Dad told me you were stalking us. He said you completely lost your mind. Is that what he said? I asked, keeping my voice low. He told me everything, Maya hissed, leaning in so the guard would not hear. He told me how you stole from the company, how you tried to ruin him. Look at me. Mom, I am happy, for the first time in my life. I am not suffocated by your rules. She slammed a set of car keys on the table. The Porsche crest glinted under the lights. Dad bought me a 911. She bragged, her voice trembling with adrenaline. And Monica gave me a credit card with no limit. They actually love me. They do not treat me like an investment portfolio like you do. Her words were like daggers, but I refused to bleed. Not now. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out a plain manila envelope. I am glad you are enjoying the car. Maya, I said, sliding the envelope under her saucer. But you need to know who is paying for it. And more importantly, who is going to pay when the bill comes due. I don't want your lies, she spat. These are not lies, I said, staring into her eyes, willing her to see the mother who had nursed her through fevers and heartbreaks. These are incorporation documents for Aurora Holdings, and loan agreements from a shell company. Look at the signature at the bottom. Maya, it is yours. Dad made you sign a stack of papers last week, didn't he? He told you it was for a trust fund. Maya hesitated, her gaze flickering to the envelope. Use the intelligence I passed down to you, I said, backing away as the security guard turned back toward us, frowning. Do not trust my words. Trust the numbers. Read it. Maya, before it is too late. I turned and walked briskly toward the kitchen before the guard could intercept me. I shed the apron in the alleyway and disappeared into the crowd, my heart pounding against my ribs. Back in the safety of the motel room, I watched the remote tracking status on the envelope's GPS tag. Maya had taken it. According to the clone of her phone that Marcus had set up, she spent the next 3 hours in her room. Not shopping. She was reading. I saw her search history pinging legal terms piercing the corporate veil, liability of registered agent, forged signature penalties. The seed of doubt had been planted. Meanwhile, the enemy camp was getting restless. Marcus reported that Monica was running frantic diagnostic checks on the Summit servers. She knew someone was inside the system, but Marcus was a ghost every time she tried to isolate the breach. He moved the connection to a different proxy server in another country. She was chasing smoke. While she was distracted, I spent the afternoon cementing my defense. I pulled footage from traffic cameras near the house that showed my car arriving and leaving at the exact times I claimed. I accessed my personal cloud backup, which Monica had tried to delete but failed to scrub completely, and retrieved the original, unaltered bank statements. Then, Marcus sent me the final piece of ammunition. You need to hear this. Val. He texted, audio from Julian's burner phone. I put on my headphones. The recording was grainy, but Julian's voice was unmistakable. He sounded terrified. I need more time. Julian was pleading. The transfer is happening on New Year's Eve. You will get your money washed and returned with 20% interest. A deep, gravelly voice answered him. You are playing games, Mr. Thorne. If that money is not clean by midnight on the 31st, we do not want interest. We will take payment in blood, and we know where your daughter goes to school. I ripped the headphones off, my hands shaking. Julian was not just a thief, he was a cornered rat dealing with wolves, and he had thrown our daughter into the cage with them to save himself. Okay, Julian, I whispered to the empty room. You want a war? You just started one you cannot survive. I sat on a frozen park bench facing Lake Michigan, clutching a cup of black coffee to keep my hands from shaking. 10 minutes later, a gray sedan pulled up to the curb. Special Agent Miller stepped out, looking as grim as the weather. We had worked together 3 years ago when a tech CEO tried to cover up a data breach. He was a good man, rigid in his morals, which was exactly what I needed. You look like hell. Valerie, Miller said, sitting down but keeping a foot of distance between us. And according to the bulletin on my dashboard, you are a fugitive wanted for embezzlement. I am not here to ask for a favor. Miller, I said, sliding a USB drive across the icy bench. I am here to give you the biggest bust of your career. That drive contains proof of a money laundering operation between Summit Global Strategies and the Blackwater Cartel. And it links the shell companies directly to Julian Thorne and Monica Reed. Miller picked up the drive. Skeptical. And the embezzlement charges against you fabricated, I replied. To discredit me before I could blow the whistle. Look at the timestamps on the file creations. Miller, they created the evidence 2 days ago. I have been gathering the real data for weeks. He pocketed the drive. If this checks out, I can get a warrant. But these things take time. Judges are slow during the holidays. We do not have time, I said, standing up. They are washing the money on New Year's Eve. I need you to be at the Ritz-Carlton Gala on Saturday. I am going to make them confess. Publicly. That is dangerous. Val, Miller warned, if they are in bed with the cartel, I have nothing left to lose. I cut him off. With the alliance secured, I had one last purchase to make. I took the final $500 Marcus had loaned me and went to a consignment shop. I found it on a rack in the back, a white structural suit, sharp as a razor blade. It was not just clothing, it was armor. In a sea of black tuxedos and cocktail dresses, I would be the white flame that burned the house down. That night, my burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered it cautiously. Mom. The voice was tiny, broken. It was Maya. I am here, baby, I said, gripping the phone. I went to the safe. Maya sobbed, her voice barely audible. I found the papers you talked about, the loan documents. They are all in my name. There is $3 million of debt, Mom, and there are letters from a collection agency in the Caymans threatening to seize assets. Listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice turning hard to keep my own tears at bay. Do not confront them. Do not let Julian see you crying. You have to be brave for me. Maya, can you do that? I am scared, she whispered. I know, but I need you to do one thing. On Saturday night, bring that folder to the gala. Keep it hidden under your dress or in your purse. When I step out, I need you to be ready. Okay, she sniffled. I trust you. An hour later, the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID was displayed boldly. Mother. I pressed record and answered. Valerie, have you lost your mind? Evelyn's voice screeched through the speaker. Julian is frantic. He says you are threatening to destroy the company. Do you have any idea how selfish you are being? We are a family. Is Julian standing right there? Mother, I asked coldly, is he telling you what to say? He is trying to save you. She yelled, turn yourself in. Confess to the gambling. Go to rehab. And maybe he will let you see Maya again in a few years. Do not drag our name through the mud just because you are jealous of Monica. I felt the last tether to my past snap. The guilt I had carried for years about not being a good enough daughter evaporated. You listen to me. Evelyn, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. You never wanted a daughter. You wanted a bank account. Well, the account is closed. You were never my mother. You were just a debt I have finally paid off. I hung up before she could respond. The next morning, the headlines hit. Julian had gone on the offensive. Disgraced CEO Valerie Cross flees country with secret lover. Embezzles millions. I stared at the news ticker on the television in the motel lobby. He was trying to cut off my escape routes, trying to paint me as a villain so no one would listen to me. He thought he had checkmated me. I smoothed the lapel of my white suit and checked the time. It was 5 o'clock on New Year's Eve. The gala would start in 3 hours. Julian was expecting a coronation. I was bringing an execution. Let's go. Marcus, I said to the young man waiting in the car outside. It is showtime. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was a golden cage filled with the most expensive vultures in Chicago. From the darkened ventilation crawlspace above the stage, I watched the spectacle unfold. There were 300 guests below, a sea of black tuxedos and designer gowns, sipping champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a week. They were there to celebrate the new year, but mostly, they were there to witness the coronation of the new king and queen of Summit Global Strategies. Julian and Monica entered to a thunderous round of applause. They moved with the practiced grace of a power couple, waving and smiling. My stomach turned when the spotlight hit Monica's neck. She was wearing my emerald necklace. It was a vintage piece my grandmother had left me, but the setting had been altered. She had twisted my heritage to fit her own throat. Focus! Val, Marcus whispered beside me. We were cramped inside the audio-visual control booth, having bypassed the keypad lock 2 minutes ago. The technicians were currently tied up in the storage closet with zip ties. sleeping peacefully thanks to a mild sedative Marcus had slipped into their coffee urn earlier. I looked down at the floor again. My mother, Evelyn, was working the room like a seasoned politician. I watched her lean in to whisper to the wife of a bank president. "Oh, it is tragic, really," I could almost hear her say, reading her lips through the high-powered binoculars. "Valerie has been unstable since college. We tried to get her help, but she was just so greedy." Then I saw Maya. My heart ached. She stood near the edge of the stage, dressed in pale blue, looking like a ghost. Her hands were clutching a small silver clutch so tightly her knuckles were white. She was terrified, but she was standing her ground. She was waiting for the signal. The music faded, and Julian stepped up to the podium. He gripped the sides of the lectern, projecting the image of the weary but resolute leader. "Thank you all for coming," Julian said, his voice dripping with false humility. "This has been a difficult week for our family and our company. We have had to make hard choices. We had to cut out the old tumors that were poisoning our integrity. Valerie Cross was a brilliant founder, but power, well, power corrupts." The crowd murmured in sympathetic agreement. "But tonight is about renewal," Julian shouted, raising a fist. "Tonight, we move forward." He stepped back, and Monica took the microphone. She wiped a non-existent tear from her eye. "I loved Valerie like a sister," Monica said, her voice trembling theatrically. "To find out she betrayed us, to find out she stole from the very people she swore to protect. It broke my heart, but we must survive. That is why I am announcing a strategic merger with Blackwater Holdings to secure our future." A merger. It was a liquidation sale. They were cashing out before the ship sank. The crowd began to clap. I saw them nodding, buying every lie, ready to toast to my destruction. "Now," I said to Marcus. Marcus slammed his hand down on the enter key. Instantly, the massive LED screens behind the stage, which had been displaying a looping video of Julian's smiling face, went black. The sudden darkness caused a ripple of gasps to tear through the room. The house lights cut out a second later, plunging the ballroom into an abyss. Panic began to bubble up from the floor. Then, a single image blazed onto the screen, the logo of Summit Global Strategies, but not in its usual calm blue. It was blood red. I leaned into the microphone, my voice amplified by the massive concert speakers, booming over the heads of the traitors like the judgment of God. "Good evening, thieves." The spotlight hit me like a physical force, turning my white suit into a beacon of blinding light against the darkness of the stage. I stepped out from the wings, my heels clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floor, a steady drumbeat of impending doom. I did not look like the broken, weeping woman they had thrown into the snow a week ago. I looked like a judge. Julian recoiled as if he had seen a ghost. He stumbled back against the podium, knocking over his glass of water. "Security!" Julian screamed, his voice cracking with panic. "Get her off the stage. She is trespassing. Remove her immediately." He grabbed his lapel microphone, shouting orders to the private security team, but only static answered him. Marcus had done his job perfectly. The earpieces were dead. The side doors were magnetically locked. The main exits were barred. We were sealed in together. "Save your breath, Julian," I said, my voice calm and amplified across the silent ballroom. "No one is coming to save you." I gestured to the massive screen behind me. The red logo vanished, replaced by a grainy, black-and-white video feed. A collective gasp rippled through the audience as they recognized the living room of my house. The date stamp in the corner read December 24th. On the screen, the image was undeniable. Julian, Monica, and Evelyn were drinking champagne. The audio was crystal clear, capturing every vile syllable. Project Farewell is in the final stage. Monica's recorded voice echoed through the hall. sounding grotesque in the high fidelity of the ballroom speakers. "I need you to sign these wire authorizations. Keep your hand loose. Remember how she loops her V." The audience watched in horrified silence as the Julian on the screen laughed about forging my signature. Then, my mother appeared on the screen, complaining about my stinginess and eagerly accepting the promise of a villa bought with stolen money. In the VIP section, the real Evelyn let out a strangled cry. She brought a hand to her chest, her eyes rolling back in her head, and collapsed into the arms of a waiter. It was a theatrical faint, a desperate attempt to escape the judgment of her peers. But no one moved to help her. Their eyes were glued to the screen. "Lies," Julian bellowed, his face turning a deep, blotchy crimson. He pointed a shaking finger at the screen. "This is fake. This is AI. It is a deep fake video generated to frame me. She is a tech mogul. She knows how to manufacture this. Is the banking system a deep fake too?" "Julian," I asked. I snapped my fingers. The video cut out, replaced by a waterfall of data. Real-time bank statements scrolled rapidly. "These are live feeds from the Cayman Islands." I narrated, walking closer to him. $10 million transferred from Summit Global Strategies. See where it lands. Not in a casino. Not in my account. It lands right here. I pointed to the final column. Account holder Monica Reed. Secondary beneficiary Julian Thorne, crypto wallet. Monica stood frozen near the edge of the stage, her face the color of ash. She looked for an exit, but the crowd had formed a wall of hostility, blocking her path. "But money is just money," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I could forgive theft, but I cannot forgive what you did next." I turned and pointed a finger directly at the table where my daughter sat. "You tell them. Julian. Tell them whose name is on the incorporation papers for the shell company laundering cartel money. Tell them whose credit score you destroyed to cover your bad investments." Julian stammered, sweat pouring down his face. I don't know what you are talking about." He used my name. Maya stood up. Her voice was thin, shaking with terror, but it carried across the room. She held up a thick manila folder. "He made me sign these." Maya cried out, tears streaming down her face. "He told me they were for my trust fund, but they are loan documents for Aurora Holdings. He put $3 million of debt in my name so he wouldn't get caught." The crowd erupted. The shock turned into palpable outrage. To steal from a wife was a scandal. To frame one's own child was a monstrosity. Julian's eyes went wild. He saw his world collapsing, and he saw the one thing that could nail the coffin shut the folder in Maya's hands. "Give me that," Julian roared. He abandoned all pretense of civility. He lunged off the stage, jumping down into the audience, charging toward Maya like a wounded animal. Maya screamed and shrank back. I did not think. I moved. Adrenaline flooded my system, making me faster than I had ever been. I leaped from the stage, landing in front of my daughter just as Julian reached her. He reached for the papers, his hand clawing the air. I stepped into his space, wound up my arm, and unleashed 20 years of suppressed rage, betrayal, and heartbreak into a single motion. Crack! My open palm connected with his cheek with the force of a whip. The sound was louder than the gunshot of a starting pistol. Julian's head snapped to the side, and he stumbled backward, clutching his face, stunned into silence. I stood over him, chest heaving, shielding my daughter with my body. "Do not," I snarled, "touch her." The sound of the slap seemed to hang in the air for a second, a singular moment of violence before the world exploded. Then came the flashbulbs. 100 cameras went off at once, turning the ballroom into a strobe-lit nightmare of blinding white pulses. The silence was shattered by the roar of Voices reporters shouting questions, guests gasping, and the low rumble of a mob realizing they had been played. Monica saw the tide turning. She hiked up her designer gown and made a desperate break for the service exit to the left of the stage, but she did not get far. A wall of men in tuxedos blocked her path. I recognized one of them, Mr. Henderson, a venture capitalist who had invested $2 million in the company last month. "Where do you think you are going?" Monica Henderson growled, grabbing her arm. "Where is my money? Let go of me!" Monica shrieked, her composure shattering. I have rights." Before she could claw at him, the side doors burst open with a crash that shook the walls. "Federal agents. Nobody move hands where we can see them." Special Agent Miller marched into the room, flanked by a dozen agents in windbreakers marked FBI. They moved with military precision, swarming the stage and the exits. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, creating a wide berth between the law and the criminals. Julian, who was still clutching his stinging cheek, looked from the agents to me and then to the handcuffs dangling from Miller's belt. The realization of his doom finally hit him, and he did what he always did. He panicked. "It was her!" Julian screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Monica. "She did it. She is the CFO. She manipulated the books. I was a victim. She seduced me and made me sign those papers. I didn't know what I was doing." The room went deadly quiet. Even the agents paused. Monica stopped struggling against Henderson's grip. She stared at Julian, her eyes wide with disbelief. Then they narrowed into slits of pure hatred. "You coward!" Monica hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "You spineless, pathetic little man." She turned to Agent Miller, raising her hands in surrender but keeping her eyes locked on Julian. "I want a deal," Monica shouted. "I can give you everything. The servers are wiped, but he has physical backups. The hard drives with the cartel ledgers are in a floor safe in the master bedroom closet. The code is his birthday. You witch." Julian lunged at her, but two agents tackled him to the floor before he could take a step. It was grotesque. The two people who had plotted to destroy my life were now tearing each other apart on a live feed, trading accusations like feral dogs fighting over scraps. It was the most humiliating spectacle I had ever witnessed, and I watched it with a cold, detached satisfaction. A hand grabbed my elbow. I turned to see my mother. Evelyn had miraculously recovered from her faint. Her mascara was running, and she looked small and old. "Valerie, darling," she sobbed, clutching my sleeve. "Thank God you are safe. You have to help me. They threatened me. Julian said he would cut me off if I didn't help him. I did it for you, to keep an eye on them. You know I love you, right?" I looked at the woman who had birthed me. I searched for anger, but I found none. The well was dry. There was only pity for a creature so hollow she would sell her own child for a condominium. Let go of my arm. "Evelyn," I said softly. "But we are family," she wailed. "No," I replied, pulling my arm away and smoothing the fabric of my white suit. "You are just a witness. Save your tears for the jury. Evelyn, you are going to need them." I turned my back on her. Agent Miller nodded to his team. They hauled Julian and Monica to their feet. Julian was weeping openly now, begging, while Monica walked with her head down, defeated. As they were marched out through the center aisle, the crowd did not boo. They just watched in silent judgment, 1,000 eyes stripping away every layer of their pretense. I felt the last tether to my past snap. I felt a pair of arms wrap around my waist. Maya buried her face in my shoulder, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "Mom, I am so sorry," she choked out. "I was so stupid. I liked the car. I liked the money. I didn't listen to you." I held her tight, stroking her hair, feeling the fierce protective instinct that had driven me through the snow and the shame to get to this moment. "It is okay," I whispered into her ear. "We are safe. The nightmare is over. I pulled away gently and looked at the chaos around us. The gala was in ruins. The brand was tarnished, but the truth was out. I walked to the edge of the stage, where the press had gathered, their cameras hungry for a statement. I looked into the lens of the nearest camera, my voice steady and clear. "Write this down." I commanded. "The rot has been cut out. Summit Global Strategies will be undergoing a complete purification starting today. We will return every cent that was stolen, and we will rebuild, because unlike them, I built this from nothing, and I can do it again." 3 months have passed since the night the lights went out at the Ritz-Carlton, and the dust has finally settled. The court proceedings were swift and brutal. With the mountain of evidence I provided and the testimony of a dozen betrayed investors, there was no wiggle room for plea bargains. Julian and Monica were sentenced last week. They received 20 years each in federal prison for embezzlement, money laundering, and fraud. I heard they are being sent to different facilities on opposite sides of the country, which seems like a fitting end for a partnership built on greed. As for my mother, the villa in Florida remains a fantasy. Without Julian's stolen money and having alienated every other member of our extended family with her venomous tongue, Evelyn had nowhere to go. She is currently residing in a state-funded nursing home on the outskirts of the city. I pay the basic fees to keep a roof over her head because I am not a monster, but I do not visit. She spends her days staring at beige walls, complaining to nurses who do not care, completely alone with the consequences of her choices. I sold the mansion. I could not live another day in a house where the walls whispered lies. I took the proceeds and bought a penthouse in the heart of downtown Chicago. It is a space of glass and steel, filled with natural light and sharp angles. There are no shadows here for anyone to hide in. My company has also undergone a transformation. Summit Global Strategies is dead. In its place, I launched Phoenix Crisis Management. The mythical bird rising from the ashes felt like the only appropriate symbol for what we survived. The client list is already longer than it ever was before. People want to work with the woman who took down her own corruption scandals. They trust the steel in my spine. The best change, however, is Maya. She is back in college, but 3 afternoons a week. She comes to the office. She is not the vice president. She is an intern. She answers phones. She files paperwork, and she learns the business from the ground up. I paid off the debt Julian saddled her with, but Maya insisted on working to pay me back, dollar by dollar. I need to understand the value of a dollar. Mom, she told me last week while organizing the archives. I never want to be that blind again. We are healing. It is not perfect, and we still have difficult conversations, but for the first time in years, we are talking to each other, not past each other. I was standing by the fireplace in my new living room when the mail arrived. On top of the stack was a plain white envelope stamped with the seal of the correctional facility. It was from Julian. I held it in my hand for a moment, feeling the weight of 20 years of marriage and the heavy ink of his handwriting. I imagined what was inside, begging apologies. More lies I did not care. I tossed the envelope, unopened, into the dancing flames of the gas fireplace. I watched the paper curl, blacken, and turn to ash. I felt absolutely nothing but a profound sense of relief. Valerie. I turned around. Marcus was standing in the doorway. He looked different in a tailored suit, no longer the scrappy hacker in a hoodie, but the confident director of cybersecurity for the Phoenix Group. The car is downstairs. Marcus smiled, checking his watch. We have that dinner reservation at Alinea in 30 minutes. You ready to go? I looked at him. Then I looked at my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. Behind me, the city of Chicago was waking up, a grid of golden lights stretching to the horizon. For so long, I thought I needed a partner to complete the picture. I thought I needed Julian to be the face of success while I was the engine. I was wrong. I am ready, I said, returning his smile. I walked over to my desk one last time before leaving. I closed the laptop on the old case files. I opened a fresh, blank document and typed a single word in the header. Future. I did not need a rich husband to be happy. I was the rich one. I was the strong one. And as I walked out the door into the cool night air, I knew that whatever challenge the world threw at me next, I would handle it. My heart was no longer broken. It had been forged into steel. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below, sharing your city or country. If you enjoyed this journey of justice, please subscribe to the channel Lily Revenge Stories, hit the like button, and give us a hype to help this video reach more people.